There would be a
He
benefit.
could hang his fine, seasoned salamis in there.
Yeah, it's like cellar temperature.
You're going to come in. There's going to be like onions and garlic and salami hanging from the
I'm
ceiling.
thinking with these people, maybe, but I'm also thinking like there's the wine rack over there.
Yeah, right.
The voices are all warmed up.
How now, brown cow? That's right. 40 minutes of warming.
How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Make Trades Great Again podcast. Had some cool episodes recently. Got a lot of feedback on the ladies joining us. That was cool.
Yep.
I think I said that last episode too, though. But it's true. I keep getting feedback.
Yep.
We just had our 4-year
DMs and some emails and whatnot that have been reassuring.
It's been fun hearing from you guys, and we want to keep hearing from you. So please send us a note saying what you want us to talk about, what you hate, what you want to hear more of, that kind of thing. Ideas. What are you dealing with on your job? That's a good one. Hey, what's been exciting to you lately, listener, watcher of this podcast on YouTube? What has been exciting to you? I want to hear about it because I think this summer has been about as lackluster of a summer that I've ever had while, self-employed. The economy's weird. In some places it's not. In most places it's, they just had earnings reports go out yesterday, Andy, and I listened closely because they started talking about Lowe's.
Right.
And I'm not a big Lowe's guy, but it affects, like, the whole report was their revenue is down like 7%, or it was down like 5%.
Okay.
And this is the 7th consecutive quarter.
Ooh.
Yeah. This is nationwide now.
Well,
their sales.
So where
this
does
is
that
not this
put
is
us?
a publicly traded company. They have to report this, and these are numbers. These aren't, well, I don't think it's that bad. It's so bad that Lowe's is like, nobody's working on their house anymore. That's their primary business.
Right.
Since COVID, people did a bunch of work, and now they're strapped for cash because everything costs too much money. And oh, by the way, we've been losing money for 7 quarters.
Well, so I would buy that, right?
Well,
I would buy that on the basis
you don't have
that-
to buy it. It's true.
No, well, it's true. It's fact. That's what they reported. But I mean, it makes sense. I would say that every home improvement business out there, right? Anybody that's in the industry of selling home improvement materials probably has similar reportings.
Yeah, 100%. No, you're exactly right. The rest of the report included those comments that are based in fact. Like,
Right.
this isn't only true for Lowe's.
Home Depot, it's
Depot,
Menards, Ace Hardware. Yeah.
Any company related to building materials, basically, and the service, and all the companies that are ancillary to those. Just think of how this affects different things. Like, remember during COVID when everything was taking a million years to arrive at your house because there wasn't anybody, quote unquote, there's no truck drivers.
Right.
Okay. I'm not an expert on any of this, by the way. I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
But now it's nobody's buying anything, so now truck drivers don't have jobs, that kind of thing. I mean, that's a way overstatement. I don't even know if it's even remotely true, but I'm using it as a fact, like, to point out, like, it's affecting everyone.
Yeah.
In a negative way, so much differently than it did just a couple years ago. And so it's crazy how much things have changed in just the last couple years.
Yeah. And that's interesting to think about that. I guess I would like to see where would it be? 11 quarters ago looked like, and then again 15 quarters ago.
Yeah.
Or 16 quarters ago, right? Like what are the numbers, right?
Pre-COVID, during COVID, and now is what you're saying.
Right. Because you end up with, if you go, well, for the last 7 quarters, we've been on a decline. Well, are you back to where you were at before it was freaking crazy?
Well, I mean,
because
I hear what you're saying, and I used to think of it that way, and now I've kind of gone to, because it's starting to affect it has been affecting my business here in the Midwest, like right in where I'm at. I know for a fact it is as slow as ever. There's so many people sitting on the bench, you name it.
Yeah.
I was surprised as heck when I heard a radio ad for a local home service contracting. Basically, they used to be plumbers. Now they do it all kind of deal.
Sure.
Big shop. They were advertising their hiring. That is the first time I've heard hiring in a little while. But here's the deal. So people are waiting for interest rates to drop. And so they're not buying houses. And if no one is buying houses, then there's no houses that need fixing up.
Sure.
All right. That's a little overstatement, but it's on point for this. And so if you don't need to renovate houses, oddly enough, for a minute there, high interest rates were actually driving home improvement sales because if you lived in an old home, you were confronted with the decision with fixing it up or buying a new one.
Right.
Okay. A lot of people started fixing them up. Instead, it comes in waves though, because there's only so many home improvements you can do before like we can't renovate the kitchen again. Like it's done. Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. We're just seeing a little bit of low right now. And it makes sense given all the improvements that happened during COVID and the kind of the years after. And like I've been saying for a while, if you look at some of the indicators and you have to trust those people, because this is, again, not my business, but the, record interest rates for a while there and then record credit card defaults.
Yeah.
So like that's a thing. If people aren't paying their bills, it's most, in mass numbers, it's not because they're bad at paying bills. It's because they don't have the money. So anyway, I didn't mean to start off negative like that. Another thing in the news, you saw it and you and I talked about it, and we've talked about this subject on this podcast quite a bit and recently even, but the heat pump water heater I installed the other day was like, I've done so few different types of tank water heaters and stuff. Like they're basically all the same in my area. And I hadn't done this heat pump. I put it in. It was so easy, first of all. It's not like any heat pump's easy to install, right?
Right.
Like water heater. It's a tank water heater. It's really not that
hook up the power and water and a condensate drain, and away you go.
Couple things about it, though. As you and I talked about this brand and how they kind of just make things easy. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
We saw their booth at AHR and we're like, wow, kind of want that little thing,
Yeah.
I want that tabletop ice maker. That thing looks sweet, Anyway, so this heat pump is made by a different company, different name on it and everything. And they make some pretty neat stuff, really, to be honest. And they make a lot of HVAC equipment that gets branded as other names.
I was staggering. Like, it was like looking at the stuff that was in their booth that I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, this looks
the
familiar.
ceiling cassette with the power filter rack that drops down 14 feet from the ceiling.
Yes.
Right?
Isn't that crazy?
Can you even imagine for service being able to walk into a house that's got 18-foot ceilings?
Yeah.
And has filter, ceiling cassette. Like, oh,
yeah, I can because my
fun.
friend has Mitsubishi cassettes all over his house, and he has like 12, 14-foot ceilings in his living room.
So you got like one of those little one-person man lift that he rolls out like at the gymnasium.
He does because he's loaded, but
but
I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want to have to do that.
Or you can buy the Medea and hit the filter button and go ding.
Yeah, exactly.
And the filter comes to you.
Yeah. Well, this heat pump had one setting on it that was different than all of them that I've seen so far. Okay. So everybody knows they got this hybrid mode, right? So let me go through it. So it had 4 operating modes, and then it had like a vacation. So 5 total, but like I don't call that vacation like an operating mode. Yeah, it's kind of opposite, right? It's like anti-mode. But the vacation mode in its factory settings, and you can change this, but in its factory settings would hold you set how many days you're going to be gone.
Okay.
It's just a number. Like I'm going to be on 13 days.
Yeah.
And it starts a timer, and it keeps the tank at 59 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And that's just so like if something were to happen, the water heater's fine. It ain't going to worry about anything else. It can't worry about anything else, right? But it's just going to keep the water from freezing if I guess that were to be, the deal.
Yeah.
Then the next mode was hybrid.
Okay.
And hybrid is simultaneously using the heat pump and the two 45 watt elements. I mean, it uses the upper element, right? It's not going to use both, but
Yeah.
it can. So that's like its hybrid mode, both heat pump and elements at the same time. Then it had e-heater, they call it. I don't know why they called it that, but whatever.
Yeah.
Electric heater, I guess. It's just elements. You can just turn it on and be like, we're just going to use this as an electric water heater. For whatever reason. I guess if the heat pump didn't work, that would be what you would be doing, right?
Right.
Like for mechanical reasons or something, like whatever, just elements. And then the next one, and not the last, is what they called economy.
Yeah.
And this is the one that was different than others in the industry that I can see just by observing and reading manuals and stuff. The economy mode on this heat pump water heater prioritizes the heat pump.
Okay.
And then it monitors load on the tank. So like if the temperature starts to drop, it kicks in the elements.
Okay.
And the reason why that's important is we're trying to, the government, you name whatever you think the reason why we're installing these is.
Right.
Whether you think it's political or you think it's, a crock of crap or whatever you think.
Yeah.
The reason this mode exists to me is the benefit, the argument as to why we're putting these things in the first place.
Right.
It's the only way you're going to save money, but also get performance.
For sure.
Because if you're running a 4,500 watt element and a 500 watt compressor, heat pump, that's 5,000 watts, right?
Right.
It's going to give you the most amount of production, more or less. But if you then kind of tweak that a little bit and you start using some sensors on the tank so you can see if you need more than a heat pump will give you, then you can run them both at the same time. But it's trying to prioritize the heat pump, which is only 500 watts.
Right.
So it's trying to drop off 4,500 watts of, it's trying to run at 10% versus 90, 110%.
Yeah,
so anyway, it was interesting. And then the fourth / fifth mode was just heat pump only,
Right.
But it had programming, so you can program it by the day up to 6 times per day.
Yeah.
And you can select each mode for each one of those times and temperatures.
That's kind of cool crazy. That you can kind of do that and try and, I guess bump up capacity during higher, peak loads. And then when you're like, hey, nobody's home, everybody went to school and work and heat pump only.
If you were in a household where you were like as predictable as could be, you had grade school kids and everybody worked outside the home, right?
Yeah.
Okay. My guess would be put in an 80 gallon with a mixing valve, run it up to like 135 degrees or something.
Sure.
Have this thing start at heat pump at like midnight. Get that sucker ramped up and then just keep it off from like 10 a.m. until like, 4.
Right.
So basically everybody's in a shower, run it out of hot water. And then maybe you have it run during that period, but then you have it turn off for like the day. Like you're saying,
at
like
10
nobody's home all day long.
Yep. And you fire it up again at 4 and let it warm up for dinner.
Right. It's interesting. You don't have to do that either. You don't have to program it. And you can program it weekly too, instead of daily. So like you could just have all the days the same.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. I'm not trying to sell this water heater to anybody. That's not why I brought it up. I truly thought this was an interesting product, and it seems to be. So I installed it. We're going on nearly a week ago, and I was back to the homeowner's house to do a totally separate project.
Yeah.
I walked in their very large mechanical room, so I didn't have to vent this thing anywhere.
Sure.
This room's like 25 by 10.
Okay.
By 10. It's way over that 700 cubic feet or 750, whatever that is. 700 cubic feet needed.
Yep.
And it was like noticeably like different temp. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was cold, but it felt way different, probably because it's
dry.
Like dry.
Yeah.
There
There
would be a benefit.
He could hang his fine, seasoned salamis in there.
Yeah, it's like cellar temperature.
You're going to come in. There's going to be like onions and garlic and salami hanging from the
I'm
ceiling.
thinking with these people, maybe, but I'm also thinking like There's the wine rack over there.
Yeah, right.
Like
yeah,
perfectly,
dehumidifier's running, making heat.
Yeah. No, it was
Awesome.
it was a cool experience. Like when I say that about a new product, because I was like it was really in depth getting to know this product for a lot of reasons, and made some videos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I was like, it was impressive. It really was.
That's
It was an impressive product, and I hope that it continues to just be reliable and everything. You know, I mean, again, it's only been in there for a week, but
Yeah. I know. Leading up to it, I remember having conversations with you, prior to you getting it, and you were like, "I don't know, dude. The box, like the dimensions on the shipping dimensions,
oh, dude.
This thing is not looking good." I don't remember. You said like 385 pounds, and
yes,
I don't think it's going to fit in my van, and
it won't fit in a van.
Yeah,
unless
and you
have
sent me a
box
picture
truck
of it on the trailer, and I was like, "What the?"
It's
holy crap.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm like in this like almost like this honeymoon phase of it. I forgot how big it is.
Right.
But for 2 days, that was top of mind. I think I talked to you about it like 3 times actually. It's it's an 80 gallon.
Yeah.
And then you add a heat pump to the top of it. It's not small.
Right.
And I took the shroud apart a little bit to see inside, kind of under the hood.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a ton going on under there, but
yeah.
There's no less components than anything else. You know what I mean? Right. Like there's circuit board, there's an expansion valve, there's a compressor there, there's all kinds of stuff going on underneath there, but it's interesting.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
You're right. It was, that's going to be the biggest challenge for most installers is the size and weight, because for most households are going to benefit. They're not going to be able to, some houses aren't going to be able to use a 50 gallon, and the 50 gallon isn't that much bigger than anything else really. Right. But you get to 80 gallons. It's almost as if you've doubled the physical size of the tank from a 50 to an 80. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it also has it's freaking heavy, dude.
Yeah.
It's giant. They have handles kind of cupped into the insulation on either side of the tank.
Yeah.
Which made it, I mean, you're not lifting this thing, but it made it a lot easier to move from one place to another on the smooth concrete floor. You know what I mean?
You could kind of slide it and shuffle
so you can kind of do that, like duck walk with it. And then they're leveling feet on the bottom of it, which is impressive, because most, like, think of the last time, other than the indirects that we install regularly from Viessmann, like think of outside of that, when's the last time you had a tank that like leveling feet?
Oh, yeah.
It's almost never, maybe I'm going to go with,
Yeah. Yep. No, I've only
You've done the Bradford.
Enabled the leveling feet on the Viessmann indirects a couple of times, but when you needed it, it was like, oh, that's sweet.
Oh yeah, I rarely need them. Like I rarely have to adjust them. Yeah. But before I tip the thing back, like I do consciously take a minute when I'm taking it out of the packaging. I tip it over, I loosen them so that if I have to, I can actually get to them. And yeah.
We did a tank, I don't know, years ago. I think it was a 120 gallon tank. Big tank. Heavy.
Is that the one you have to build, basically?
It might have been that Viessmann, but it had 4 feet on it. It was the dumbest thing ever. And I get it because it probably weighed, 1,000 pounds when it was done and full, but the 4 feet on this thing, and it was on a floor that was not, I don't remember, it was like on a vinyl floor or something like that. So it had some compression to it.
Yeah.
And we spent more time trying to level and tweak this tank out to get the thing flat, level, and like not rocking because of the 4 feet. And then once we got it filled and loaded, it was still not right because it was like 1 foot had more weight on it.
I've put tanks on like subfloor assemblies instead of concrete.
Yep.
And I will, by experience, and some old timer taught me this, I will cut a piece of plywood, 3/4 inch plywood, roughly the size of the water heater. I want you to see that it's there
Yeah.
and set it on top of the plywood on top of the subfloor. Sounds silly, but
That was the
the
same
engineering
thing
will
we
tell you
should have done.
it distributes a load more evenly, right?
Yeah.
And if it has feet on it, I would say absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. You need, you know,
Yeah.
imagine having a piece of crappy, like, CDX flooring or something. It pops a hole, the foot pops a hole through it. Oof.
Right.
That would be bad news.
That would be a bad day.
You know, you can't see the floor because there's some sweet 1987 linoleum brand vinyl flooring
Right.
on top of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. No, it was interesting. It was a good experience. I don't want to have to move one again. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like I'm glad you brought it up again. I don't want to belabor it, but it was, for my operation, it was a whole extension of the job that I wouldn't have accounted for.
Yeah.
Had I not experienced, you know, because I hadn't experienced it, I didn't realize that it was going to be, it wasn't, I knew the dimensions, but I never thought about it, that it wouldn't fit in my van. It's not going to fit in the van. It's not going to fit in a high roof either. We have the same door heights, first of all, and it's also more than the 10-inch difference between the mid and the high.
Even if you could get it in your in a high roof, you're still going to need a lift gate to get it out, right? I mean, because your hand truck, your dolly, even a stair climbing dolly, you're probably not going to tilt a tank that tall back.
It would be a 2-person job, and it would be. I think you're running the risk of damaging it physically on the outside, like even if it's just cosmetic. Yeah, because of that.
Yeah,
even if you could do it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's too tall.
Yeah,
there's nothing they can do about that. You know how they handle that? Is they make a 2-piece system.
Sure.
And now we're talking.
It's a different animal.
Different altogether and a lot more cost.
Yep.
You know, so it's not, again, that's like the only downside, but I already had forgotten about it until you brought it back up. You know what I mean? Right. Like it wasn't an issue once I was there, but that doesn't make a lot of sense to even say that out loud. You know, like it was an issue. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I don't know. I think we've talked about these quite a bit. We're going to see more and more of them. I put a thing on my Instagram asking people, like, have you installed these? Yes, no, not yet. And like, tell me your experience kind of thing in the comments. And there's some good comments in there. Like people are like, look, we've had some issues. We installed this one and we replaced it like 3 times. I asked them why, and I don't think they got the reply back.
Yeah.
But it sounded to me like it was like a performance thing. And I'm just going to read into the comment based off of not having read the reply, if there was one even, but
sure.
Like I'm guessing here and I'm not, it has nothing. It doesn't matter. But, there's an application for any type of water heater.
Yes.
And then there are applications that do not fit that water heater.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
I think that is something that, especially in heat pump water heaters, that anyone who's selling or making the attempt to install and have a happy customer, you need to have a different conversation than you would with any other tank type water heater. You know, take it back to the first days of your very first tankless water heater, right? It's different. It operates differently. It functions differently. I mean, everything about it is different.
Yeah.
Treat this heat pump the exact same way.
Yeah.
Right. They're completely functional, but if you put it in the wrong application, and that's we just were talking about this in an episode the other day. I've unsold more heat pump water heaters from people that are like, "Oh, we're going to go ahead and do this heat pump water heater," and it's because they want me to put this thing in a closet where their 50-gallon electric is at now in the middle of the house. Not happening. It isn't going to work. You are not going to be happy with it, right? It is not going to save you any money,
right?
And it's going to suck.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
no, you're right. I think I echo what you say, and I agree with it. I would also add that it doesn't have to suck if you can, like you said, if you need to understand this, you do. And it's like anything else. people are going to resist it because it's going to require a little extra brain power. And like, I'm not making fun of people either. Like I kind of am, kind of not. Like I get it. I also look at certain things and I'm like, dang it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wish I didn't have to learn about this. I wish I just knew it.
Right.
But it doesn't mean it's bad either.
No.
This happened to be this. I could check all the boxes with this one. I really could. Room was plenty big.
Yeah.
They already had an electric water heater in there, so they knew about performance, and everything was fine. There was no real downside to the proposal. Proposal of this going in.
Yeah.
And I am the last person to be like, you should do this because there's rebates. But on top of it, there are rebates and stuff. But that doesn't change how you're going to be upset if you don't have enough hot water for a shower. Rebate is not going to make that go away.
Right.
Your customer is going to be so pissed if they can't have access to hot water.
Right.
Typically because they did before, and now you've changed this and you put this thing in. And if it's not the right product for them, is what I'm saying. A rebate ain't going to change that.
No.
So, yeah, I mean, in reality, it went well. It seems to be performing really well. I asked them, like, how's the water? And I'm like, their first response was, well, it could be a little hotter. I'm like, okay, cool. Perfect. There's a mixing valve. I'm just going to turn the dial a little bit. We'll let it adjust. You tell me if that's good. And he's like, no, don't even make an adjustment. It's just, I think the old one was so hot that we were used to it. It's plenty hot. Like we don't go all the way on the shower valve or anything. I'm like, okay, cool. So we just left it. And I told him how to adjust the mixing valve. I'm like, look, it's not going to be instant. You got to run water through it. You got to wait for that water to get to the faucet. Like it's a pretty dumb system. I'll be honest with you, but it works and it's reliable. So, so there you go.
I'd be curious. I'd be curious to see the energy data.
Yeah, me too.
On the difference between running on a heat pump water heater, running at, let's say 110 versus, having the mixing valve and whatnot. I wonder what the impact is on that.
Well, I mean, for sure it's going to take more energy to go from 110, 15 or 20 up to the 135 I had this set at.
Right.
No doubt. Absolutely.
What
I'm
is
not
the
an
max?
Idiot. It's going to take more energy to do that.
Yeah. No, and I'm not saying I guess I'm not saying that it's going to not like clearly it's going to take more energy, but what is there a diminishing return? Like is there a point where, and I'm sure there is, it's a heat pump where you have to rely so much on compressor efficiency and whatnot to get to is 145 the break point? Like where
what's that point at which it doesn't make sense anymore?
Yeah. Because we run into that on, like on geothermal stuff.
Yeah. There's a limit to what you can do before it's just not useful anymore. You have to add heat.
Right. But what you end up with, like on a geothermal system, if you're trying to, let's say you're on your de-superheater, you're trying to run, 140 degree discharge temp. In order to do that, the compressor, the head pressure has to be so high in order to get the heat. And you end up with high pressure faults is a real common thing.
Right.
When you've got that, for instance, those Climate Master Trilogy units, I think if we found on those, it's like 128 or 129 degrees. It's like right at that sweet spot
which is a ton of hot water, by the way.
It is a ton of hot water. But if on that particular system, we're not at all concerned about how much energy it uses. It's more about performance of hot water, like how much hot water can we get. Well,
so that's where we're at on setting this higher in this scenario too. Is I don't know the answer to that. Like, what is the point at which this is just costing more and we're not really getting any benefit?
Yeah.
I acknowledge, and first and foremost, like set out there, like I'm setting this at 135 for one reason.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's going to cost more in energy costs to go beyond the desired set point at the faucet. But what we're doing at 135 and then in conjunction with the mixing valve going down to that like 115, 118 degree point, 120. 120 is plenty hot, people. It just is. There are the rare instances where people want it hotter. They think they do. If you give them that one, they quickly realize like this is actually hot enough. But anyway, because you're bathing at like 105 on the high end, by the way.
Oh yeah.
The mixing valve, as you know this, and I'm just saying this for people listening that maybe aren't or are interested in it. You're increasing the storage, the gallons per hour delivery rate. Okay, that first hour rating is increased because now we've got this water that we're mixing down by like 10% or so. So we're increasing the volume of the tank in comparison to a tank set at the set point and holding at the set point versus what we're mixing to. And so it allows you to basically take a little bit of that recovery situation out of the mix.
Sure.
And you're hoping that in average bathing and typical water use that the heat pump recovery mode and that lengthy recovery period is less impactful on the performance and on the demand basically, right? And so it just works. And also having a higher temperature, there are some other benefits, like if you had bacteria and stuff like that in your water that you're dealing with, but there's a better ways to take care of that than use electricity too. You know, you can use like a UV light that doesn't take hardly anything, but either way, it works. It's a proven method. And it ultimately what it does is, like in the case of the mixing valve and a larger storage in Minnesota, we have these incentive programs that come from the utility company. So like, you can actually set this up and connect it to a monitoring device that can control it. But you can actually set this up so that with that programming, so that it's only using power at night and probably get through all of your day's worth of hot water needs. Right. If you're storing at that higher temperature.
Sure.
Or you probably would go up a little higher, probably like 145 now. So you have like even more storage. Yeah. But then you can get into that night set or that off-peak kind of heating, and you can do it officially too, like set up through your utility. So where you're not even powering it during the day, or you're using limited power, which is where that programming really comes into play. Like, have it turn on during the day, but only heat pump, so like, it uses, it's interesting. There's a lot to it. It's a water heater. That's the other thing too. I hate using this. I just said it a second ago. At the end of the day, but it is what we're going to have. Like you were saying, you got to learn it. You have to know it and understand it. And then you have to take that understanding and apply it. Yeah. And as you warned a minute ago too, if you're putting it in the wrong place, it doesn't really matter if it works or it doesn't work. It was the wrong application.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're going to have poor results. So it's interesting because I think that's one of the things that with a heat pump water heater is it comes in a box. It looks very much so like an electric water heater. Yeah. And the manual for it is not significantly different than an electric water heater.
This one, yeah, you're right. I've read the manuals of each of them now, right?
Right.
Or I've at least closely browsed them.
Right.
I have read this one. This one has some like, it's more what you and I are used to with the boilers. There are like boilers. All these access parameters. They call them like engineering codes or something like that. Like you can actually see how much this thing runs. You can read.
That's cool.
You can read resistance values on its various 10K thermistors and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow. So like you can actually just diagnose a lot of things right through the control if there were start to have.
Right.
There's error codes. I mean, it's
is it Wi-Fi connected?
This one isn't. And I think that they were saying it was going to be maybe when we saw it at HR. I'm not sure. It isn't.
I couldn't remember if it was or not.
I wonder, do we need water heaters Wi-Fi connected?
I think,
I don't know.
I don't agree. Know. I don't. My Navian is connected to Wi-Fi.
Mine too. Do you ever
I
use it?
haven't looked into it. Probably haven't logged into that in 2 years. And
I turn mine off when I leave town for a week.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't.
Otherwise,
done
it's recirculating, and I'll, because it's on a program. You know what I mean?
Mine might not even be actually physically connected right now. Just it's physically connected, but it may not even be logged into the proper Wi-Fi anymore.
Right.
Now that I think about it, in that case, it's like, whatever. I think there's some benefits to it, but I think the last time I did, it was for that reason. I was like, oh, I'm going to do something. And I turned the water off and I turned the water heater off from the kitchen. I was like, oh, I could just get on my Moen app and turn the water off. And then I'm going to turn the water heater off so it's not recirculating. And I'm going to change this stop on the kitchen sink, whatever it was. I was like, oh, that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah. No, it's interesting. Let me ask you this. I just got a text from Danielle.
Yeah.
Question: 3-inch copper pro press. Does the 340, the RP 340, need the booster attachment to press it?
For copper pro press,
3-inch.
No,
copper.
I don't. Not on copper. The
Not on copper.
only
It needs it for iron pipe. What'd you say?
Yeah, boosters only on mega press.
Okay,
is my understanding.
I'm going to reply to her into my watch. Ready?
Okay.
No, Andy and I both think it's the booster is only for mega press.
And then you should ask her when she's going to be on the show.
And I'm supposed to ask you when you're going to be on the show because I'm talking into the microphone as we record, and I replied to your text message. Okay. No, I don't think it is either. I'll look it up quick, though. But I'm done talking about the water heaters unless you got more to add.
Let's be done talking about the water heater.
Thank you for listening and adding to it.
Absolutely.
It's interesting to me, so I hope somebody finds this interesting and useful and wants it. If you want to ask me more questions about my experience or Andy's done some others, again, send us a message. Hit us up in the DMs over on Instagram. You can email us at Andy.
Make trades great again
at gmail.com. You can't point your hat for the people that are listening to.
I know. Everybody's like, what was that awkward pause?
That was an awkward pause.
You'll have to
log
guys. Into YouTube.
I appreciate you listening. Yep. And I got a nice little message from our friend HVAC Jay. I'm supposed to, he was joking, bringing up the fact that I always say, and if you're listening this far, thank you.
Yeah.
He reminded me that might want to remind the people that didn't listen this far, you jerks. Where you at?
Where you at?
All right. I'm just going to hit stop. You ready?
Do it.
Right.
Later.
See ya. Thanks, man.